Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our Windows series. I'm Joe Carswell. I was just reviewing some of our footage from a trip we took to Mountain View Window and Door. The owner there, Devin Tilley, gave us a great tour. It was all about windows. Also, Devin Tilley is the host of a podcast called Art of Construction. If you're into podcasts, if you're into building, you might want to check that out. We are right in the middle of COVID, so you might notice in a lot of the scenes, it might look a little strange, but I'm off to the side right on the edge of frame. That's because we were trying to social distance. So let's get right into this.
Oh man, you found the place. Art of Construction's honored to be here at the Mountain View Window and Door Experience Center, and you want to talk windows and doors? We got the place for you. So let's go check it out.
So what have we got here?
Let's talk operating windows. So what this wall here is talking through all the different types of windows, meaning how do they operate, right?
Sure.
And so this window that goes up and down, this is what we call a single hung. And one of the things a lot of times people will get is double hung versus single hung. And double hung means both sashes go up and down.
Right.
On this value window, this one is fixed and only the bottom one goes up and down. And there's definitely pluses and minuses to both of those that we can go in and talk about that further. The next thing is a window that goes back and forth, which would be called a gliding or a sliding window, where the window goes back and forth. Now, different operating or architectural elements are going to yield different operating types, meaning if they're skinnier and taller, they want to go with the single hung. If they're wider, a lot of times they go with the single hung. So this display is to just show the different types, but a lot of times the gliding windows will be wider.
Sure, of course.
And then the best performance windows, so cost-wise, the single hung and gliding are going to save a few dollars, but they're all based on friction, right? And a casement window, a crank-out window, cranks out from the side versus an awning window cranks out from the top. But when there's weather, it's just going to make those seal tighter, right? So they perform better, but they come with a lot more moving parts, which drives the cost up. So single hung, gliding, casement, awning, and then picture window would be your standard different window types in the market.
So when you say picture, you mean fixed? We talked about it as a fixed pane. Is that
Yeah. So a fixed pane would technically be this top fixed pane. Gotcha. So a pane would be the glass, right? So a picture window is just another term, and that's the thing of learning to speak window and door. Absolutely. And then all these different window manufacturers will call it their own thing to even make it more confusing.
Right.
But at the end of the day, a window that operates fixed, picture, single pane versus operating, and you really do need to learn up and down single hung, side to side gliding, crank out casement from the side or the awning, and then you got to find out details of why certain windows would yield different things. Like casements is what most people use for what they call egress, and that's the code for a firefighter with a tank to be able to get in and out of it. It's very hard to do that on this window.
Sure.
But it's a big kite when you open it up out there versus an awning window. If you leave it open, it sheds rain.
We also, in our lesson, talked about a hopper window, which is basically the reverse of an awning. Do you sell a lot of those? Is that something that's relevant for today's
Not in the
market?
U.S. Hoppers are big in European design, but in the U.S., back to performance in different ways, you can only set up a shop to make so many different types of windows, right? So hopper windows have become not as popular for U.S. manufactured windows. They're a popular thing for European style windows, and it's just different people have different elements, but a hopper is basically a reverse awning, and then you can get into equal or a cottage and all these different things of how that works.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it all boils down to, doesn't matter what it is, you have to install it right.
Absolutely, and I guess the complexity of the window, the installation becomes more complex with a more complex window. Is that fair to say?
It can be, yes. Yeah. And the weight and the size, all that add to complexities. Because right now it's all about bigger, the glass house movement, right? So people want as much mountain views as they can capture.
I gotcha. So Devin, I see this window right here shows me it's got a grid in it. Is that available in all of these styles? Is there any limitation to a style and some of the features like grids that can be included?
Yeah, that's a great question. And grids can be done so many different ways, and different manufacturers are going to do them different ways. So I think that's definitely something maybe we go into the details and talk about the fenestration types or kind of getting to those details. But you got to first start to understand which windows do you want fixed or which windows you want to operate, and then the strengths and weakness and the trade-offs of those. And once you get that worked out, then we want to go in and understand how different windows are built and what different options you can put in those windows.
So for a customer, if they're doing an order for an entire home, say, are they picking one type of window, or you're customizing the use of that particular window for each opening, each rough opening?
Great question. We try to secure the vision of the architect that designed the project. And that's where we put all these displays in here, because what you see on paper sometimes can be looked a little bit differently than what it really looks like, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's about getting the best value, right? So
Right.
you want bigger windows here, smaller windows there, which may yield to different operating types or different options.
Is there any one style that works best for a retrofit?
Yeah,
kind of
great,
situation?
great question. And when you're talking about new construction windows, it's all about a nail fin, and that's a whole nother series of weatherizing the exterior. But then once you put all the facade around those windows, and then now 20 years from now, hopefully 20 years or plus, because you put in a good window, when you go to take that out, replacing it is all about what components or how they build that for a proper replacement window. And we're all about full frame replacement. We don't want to just throw a window inside of a window, because now you're not going to perform. So definitely new construction versus replacement are two very different avenues when it comes to windows.
So now we understand the basic types and we've seen them in action. Thank you for that. Let's move to some of the parts and pieces of what make these work.
Let's do it.
Okay.
The questions we always ask is, what color do you want? In today's world, the popular trends is dark colors. Outside and inside do very different things, especially here in Colorado where the temperature fluctuations, right? So color is a big deal, and then you ask if you want to paint or stain the inside, or how you're going to trim out the inside, and then different window components are going to offer different options along the way. And what we put out here is going down the line here to say the most economical window in the market is a vinyl window. So 3 out of 4 windows made are vinyl. Here we really work on the other 25%, is what we mainly sell, because vinyl windows are a price point window. They definitely have their place, but they have a lot of limitations. This here is when we were over at the window wall, we were talking all those different drivers. This is the Andersen 100 series. It's a mixture of wood and vinyl, so it's much stronger and it's going to hold up better in the elements. So it yields those dark colors and those bigger sizes. And then this is a vinyl clad, wrapped in vinyl, the outside, wood on the inside. So when they say they want to paint or stain the inside, you now start getting into that millwork option. And then my favorite window, if I were to put it in my house, in fact, this is the windows in my house, is an extruded aluminum exterior with an engineered or an LVL core with the beauty caps with all kinds of capabilities on the inside to get that design and custom look. With the Andersen E series is an option here. So there's kind of talking through good, better, best when it comes to, these are what we call corner sections. We're taking the window and we're cutting the corner off to understand how they work. And then when you get into starting attaching windows and getting those whole glass walls, that's the industry term called mulling. And that's where you're going to take windows and put them together. That's where you have to have, where vinyl windows don't mull very well to the strength. These you can now make window walls and do a lot more capabilities when you get into these types of windows.
And I guess that's some of the challenge of installing the vinyl windows, is they're kind of noodles. They're flexible, and if you don't shim them true, the window will not help you with that, right? It almost fights you.
Right, or even if you
do.
do everything right and then it gets really hot, and that, we talked about that single hung, and then the check rail gives you a smiley face. You don't want that smiling, because now it's not going to seal.
So these cutaways are great. Walk me through what's going on here in these different samples.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll kind of go from the good, better, best and just talk through different components of the window here.
Perfect.
So what we have here is a vinyl window which has several chambers, and then glass is definitely something we're going to want to go in detail, but your standard glass is dual pane with a spacer bar, so insulated glass, and there's a lot of different coatings and different ways this glass can be done. Cardinal Glass is the biggest manufacturer of glass in the market. Everything we sell of all our different manufacturers, we use Cardinal Glass on almost everything. And they're a really great company that really there. Then the next piece that you really want to know about is what they call the glazing stop. It holds the glass in, but you have to have a stop to where if the glass breaks or has seal failure, you can replace it. So every window is going to have a glazing stop. Some will be stopped from the inside, some stopped from the outside, depending on that. but then they'll have a detail of how both sides of that window works. And then a new construction window is going to have a nail fin that typically is 1 3/8 back from the front, and that's because of your sheathing and siding or what you're going to put up there to trim that whole window system out and have it properly weatherized. So that's what you get with a vinyl window. It's just a basic vinyl window, and usually they're going to drywall or something up to it on the inside. For detailing out the inside is a big education on how windows fit into the wall structure.
So why is this not a solid, why so many chambers? Why is it not a solid material? Wouldn't that make a stronger window?
Cost and performance. So chamber, when you add air to it, it's going to be better for performance. And if you had a solid lineal of vinyl, it would cost a fortune. And it would weigh a bunch. So they're going through all these chamber designs, but then you have these gaskets of how fixed and operating windows are all sealed together. So these window manufacturers are going to buy or create these lineals, and all these different lineals get put together into a tested system.
Nice.
So after a vinyl window, then you get into composites, and a window I could have next to it here would be a fiberglass window. So we could grab a fiberglass window as well. And so fiberglass or pultrusion, or this is a patented product from Anderson called Fibrex that they've patented how the mixture of the wood and vinyl together with the capstock. And so you basically have the same thing here. It's just a little bit beefier, and you see this glazing stop is on the outside. And you can see that capstock around there where you have the different colors inside and out. And this display is showing how that wall structure works, the nail fin, and how. And then this is also showing that nail fin to understand how it works into the buck and sealing that up.
And is a vinyl nail fin pretty much standard on any type
Yeah,
of window?
it's got, well, you can get rigid and other types of nail fins, but the thing I tell people is the nail fin is not to hold the window in. The nail fin is there to weatherize it. You got to make sure you shim it, and on bigger windows there's other installation methods. But the nail fin is there to weatherize the system.
Interesting.
So you're taking the durability of vinyl, but then you're putting it around wood to give it the strength. And then everything on the inside is wood that you can paint or stain to have that artwork. And this is the part where I talk to people about windows and doors are a structure element because they're the weather, but they're also a beauty element, right? Both inside and out. So they become this thing that has a lot of conversation around that people don't necessarily think about the windows and doors, but they make the space in a lot of ways, right? And to take your nail fin one step further, different manufacturers are going to have different components. Like this is to put their exterior trim. So then you can add different components that different manufacturers will add in.
And that's like a snap-in casing?
Yep. And then my favorite for Colorado is a extruded aluminum. So here's just a piece of what the outside is. So this extruded aluminum is the strongest material you can have. And extruded aluminum is going to be thick enough versus rolled form aluminum to where this can take on a hailstorm or certain weather that we have in Colorado, right? And if you think about taking care of our beautiful earth, is we want to put a window in that's going to last. So detailing in on this window, this has what we call a thermal break. So you have extruded aluminum on the outside, and then this is made out of the Fibrex material. So when we talk about fenestration, different components, you start mixing that all together. And then the core of this window is made out of LVL, so structured lumber that has a commercial rating that's not going to warp or twist. And then you have the inside with the wood where you have a wood glazing stop and then a secondary stop that the screen goes in that can be replaced. And there again, you can see that thermal break that stops that cold transfer into the system.
There's a lot going on in that window. How about other parts? What else? This makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think glass is something maybe we should go in and talk about coatings. Sure. And we have a whole wall of glass that we could talk through about adding different panes of glass and coatings.
Absolutely. Let's do it. It makes perfect sense. So we've got a lot of glass here. To the casual observer like me, it all looks like glass. I'm sure there's a lot of difference here that you can talk us through.
This particular one is triple insulated glass that has low E4 272. What the heck did that all just mean, right? And the part that I'm going to say is that when we talk about coatings in glass, you want to use the word coatings, not film. Coatings, or a titanium dioxide coating is typically what they use, or a sputter coat.
Which is a metal.
Yeah, so they're putting that on the inside. So this here is a triple pane, 3 panes of glass. So if you have 3 panes of glass, you actually have 6 sides of glass.
Sure.
And then you're going to have 2 spacer bars. Why would you do triple pane versus double pane? Multiple air cavities can increase the performance, but it drastically increases the weight of the unit and the cost and all these other variables.
If you're doing a triple pane, what's your typical gas that you would insert in between those panes? I know argon's a very common one. Are you using a more exotic gas in a triple pane?
So argon in gas is what most people talk about, but it's a small variable of the performance of the glass. So the argon gas, now the thing about argon gas in Colorado, we're in this bubble of coming to elevation. So when you come to elevation, we have a thing that you have to manage called pillowing. So pillowing means when you're in Denver, you fly into Denver, you get that bottle of water or Coke at the airport, and then you go up to Breckenridge or the bag of chips and it's maxed out.
Yep.
That's what happens if you do gas-filled windows without breather tubes. So most of our stuff, everything we sell with SDLs or grids comes with breather tubes because the pillowing, it pillows the glass and it pops the grids. We only do argon if the windows are like, we have one plant in Denver, we have one in Prescott, Arizona, where elevation is similar.
You build them here and they're adjusted to the...
This is kind of a Colorado bubble thing, and I know your platform's everywhere, but you got to understand your bubble, whether you're on the coast for hurricanes or in the mountains or all these different variables.
Well, I'm a North Carolina boy, so you just schooled me on something I didn't know. I thought argon was a universal thing, and you're telling me that windows here have to
So my
breathe.
favorite glass is right here. Double pane I-89. What's I-89? It's a sputter coat on the interior surface that basically is the same coating that goes on your iPhone. This adds massive performance, doesn't add any weight, and the cost is not a huge adder. So different coatings, and this is a newer coating that is recently released that you're not going to get at the standard lumberyard or wherever, because they don't go into these details with these different things. It's a performance glass, but you don't want to have a performance glass that now has reverse effects, right? Meaning out of budget, weighs too much. So dual pane glass with bigger air cavities, bigger chambers, bigger thing is becoming a big thing. And then hard coats or more coatings on the glass is a big technology thing.
Can you give us a little more information about the placement or the consideration of the window and the orientation of it to the sun as far as the coating goes?
Really understanding the southern exposure of, you may put on that face of the house a different coating, because you don't want to actually put a coating that doesn't let any of the heat in if you maybe want some of that solar gain, right?
Sure.
So it's a trade-off effect of how dark do you want it to not take away from those mountain views, but also that lime green couch or those beautiful wood floors you invested in. You don't want the sun coming through that glass and fading. So it's understanding all those trade-offs, and I like to give mental pictures with this stuff to say, what are we talking about? Visible light transmission is how much sunlight is coming through the glass.
Right, and the rays that you don't want, the UV rays, I never thought about it, it's deteriorating some of the interior parts of the house.
Correct.
Well, Devin, we've gone through window types, we've gone through how the window itself is constructed, we've actually gone through a lot of the parts and pieces like the glazing, the coatings, a lot of the materials. Can we get into some, I know you guys do this from beginning to end. You actually do some installation. I'd love to talk about some of the process of how this window would go into a structure or a building and become, weather tight and successful as an item in the house.
Thanks for asking, because if I've learned in one thing in being in the window business, it's that it doesn't matter what product you use if you don't install it right and it doesn't perform. That's really the key, right? So weatherizing that and putting it all together. And I would highly advise you to find a system. So our company, and I'd love to go over with you guys, we use the DuPont system to the T of all those things. But you also have to understand there's all kinds of different construction models out there now to say, at the end of the day, use a proven process or a proven system, get trained on that, and I'd be happy to talk to you about how we do it.
I've never heard of that. So a DuPont system would be a series of steps to take for a successful installation?
Right.
From when you show up on the site to where you just got an RO and you want something in there to get it done?
Right. So Tyvek is a house wrap, right? So then they have a whole system about how that house wrap ties into the wall that DuPont has integrated that we use. But the other part of this didn't have an agency, so all of our installers go through AMA. the American Institute of Manufacturers. So they get AMA certified because there's so many different types of installs. So you have to understand whether it's a block frame, replacement, new construction. Zip systems are really popular now. So how are you going to deal with all these other types of sheathing and all these different variables? So you got to get trained on those different variables, but then have a system that can match those different variables and use the full system. Don't just go grab whatever you got, because then you're going to get yourself in trouble. Hey, what do you say we just go to our shop and we can grab some stuff and talk about what we think is key elements of insulation and tape and stuff like that?
Hands on, I love it. Let's do it.
So it's funny, the longer I'm in the window business, the more passionate I get about the warehouse. And we got a full warehouse right now today and walking down here. And the key of all this stuff is you have to really have the logistics systemized for as windows keep getting bigger, when you look at all this stuff, to properly store it, huge windows, how they go in. And then back to where we were talking about the different window types, a vinyl window, they're not going to be able to afford to package it because it's all about that cost thing. So then you have the complexities of job site damage or different things with a vinyl window versus when you look and see this is the Andersen 100 series where they fully wrap it, and they also put protective film on the glass. So during construction, because where do most of the problems happen with windows? Transportation and during construction. Everything we do is made to order. Yeah. We don't have a window on the shelf.
Oh, that's a stock.
Everything is custom ordered. Yeah. If that's a whole different business model. That's the big orange box that you better make this work, whatever we have, if they have it.
This is the scary part, right? You're showing up and you're taking something that's very perfect and well engineered and putting it into something that's very imperfect and not as well engineered.
Right, and it's tested and it's perfect in the lab, but the job site is very different than the lab, and there's so many different variables and so many different, this type of shim and this type of flashing and this type of foam and all this stuff that the manufacturer would tell you have to use. And then you just say, where do I get it? I've ran out. And all those stuff, that's where you lose all your profitability and efficiencies if you don't have those systems in play. All right. So here we have a few of the materials. And what you see, this big stack, and what I'm going to talk about is you have to have systemized components, and then you have to have custom components, right? So you try to systemize every job to use the same thing over, and in the world of logistics, you try to build repeatable processes. But if you're doing custom jobs, that every job is different, you have to have repeatable processes for stuff that's different. And one of them that we found that's super valuable is sill pans. So sill pans, typically on doors or certain windows, is a component that we have custom made, and we've systemized that to work with other systems where they'll say you can use this or that or this or that, right? And the reason I put these in order here is if you order this and not this, not going to work, because these two actually go together, because what you have here is a gun, what you have here is the foam.
Right.
You can't buy those guns at the big orange box. You can only get that from specialty places. But the beauty of this is it's going to last 3 times longer. It can get put in at cold. It's going to work, so it's been tested versus certain foam that you use half it and throw it away and you're wasting a bunch of stuff. So driving a finish is, and this is a key thing. So we talked about the rough opening. So you have to put the right shims to place the square level and plumb window in the opening. And then around the window to the rough opening, you use the foam. And this seals that from the window to the rough opening.
So we have our canister and we have our applicator. And this is your professional version of what someone would see as a minimal expanding foam in an aerosol.
Exactly. Sure. And then the other part is when we were talking through that, there was the nail fin and how you weatherize it. This is where we use the DuPont flashing system. And there's a whole, they've done an amazing job, and that's why we're big fans of that. It's the International Builder Show. They have a whole training, and that's what I've said for many years, is that the people that are going to be champions of your stuff is go educate them like you guys are doing with Teach Construction, right? So making a system around the whole construction system versus just a flashing system, right? So flashing is how you flash around it.
Is that a typical flashing width that you're using?
Most people use 4, but on ours, depending on what the system, we'll use 4, 6, 9. We have all. Then we also have a product called Flex Wrap that can wrap the sills. Sure. And so they have this whole wide breadth of products. At the end of the day, is make sure you're weatherizing, you're insulating, and you're following the manufacturing instructions.
Do you consider a custom bent built sill pan superior to a site built flashing based?
Yeah,
sill
great
pan?
question. It's back to when we were talking about window types and the word fenestration I used of different types of materials. Strongest is aluminum, right? And if on this is one pan for a 25-foot long door, so a rough opening 25-foot span, you're talking major stuff. So this is how deep that door.
Sure.
So when you get into big systems like that, you want the rigidity and the strength of aluminum. And we always talk about the front dam versus the back dam. So we put a back leg on this dam,
Right.
but we put
Well, there you go.
flexibility in there.
There is your advantage, right? You're creating something that's going to shed and transport water in a way that you can't create with a.
Yeah, and
with
we're going
a
to perfectly shim and level and seal silicone this to the floor. That
Absolutely.
may not be perfect. We're going to make it perfect.
I'm
with
sold.
this.
So how many of these custom sill pans are you doing for windows? Is there a size where you switch to this, or?
Well, it's really become one of our things that we talk about, and I'd love to show you guys, is what we call the indoor-outdoor living or the moving walls. The glass house concept is I want it all glass and I want it all to move. Well, how are you going to hold it up? How are you going to weatherize it, right? And so that's where it's come to where the big door category has really revolutionized the indoor-outdoor living.
Right.
But you got to have trusted advisors that are going to use these components to make it work, and that's what I'd love to show you, the big doors.
Absolutely, I'm looking forward to that.
This is a cool thing that we've integrated with Liaison Home Automation. So one of the things that I'm passionate about on the art of construction is getting different experts working together to where you see this big Lutron window covering here to say, I can hit this in sequence to say, let's get this window covering system working to where I say, okay, open window covering and make that moving wall that's 800 pounds with my phone, the button, whatever, have this wall of glass open, and you can put it on party mode where you can have a sensor to where when you bring drinks out, it sees you and opens, and all kinds of fun stuff. And this is all brought to you by Summit Automation, where we integrate motorization into windows and doors. We take the glass house that people want and make it a reality.
Wow, that's crazy. This is something else.
Here we go. Well, thanks for coming in. It's an honor
Devin,
to
I
have you.
appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man, and this has been an education for me, and I'm sure all of my students as well. So,
Yeah, this has been a big passion for us, and we're always working hard on it, and we're honored to showcase it. And we have one here in Denver, and we also have one in Grand Junction, and I work with different window dealers all over the country. I'll leave you with this at our loading dock out there, because that's where all the product comes in and all the product goes out. There's a huge sign with a quote above there that says, "Speed is good, but accuracy is everything."
So I really love that. Speed is good, but accuracy is everything. That's a great way to end this. So let's get back into the classroom. So I hope you enjoyed that video as much as I did. Thanks again to Devin for sharing his space, his time, and his knowledge about windows. Don't forget his podcast, Art of Construction. Check that out as well. And also, if you want to learn more about windows, we have several lessons that tie right to this trip that we just took. These lessons cover everything from the tools and materials, the types of windows, and the actual installation process of a window. Those links will be added to our description below, and they're probably showing up in links above me here as I speak. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next lesson. This video is a production of Trade Skills U, all rights reserved.